The accident released massive amounts of radioactive particles into the environment, leading to significant health impacts for the affected populations. Over 6.5 million people were exposed to varying levels of radiation. Over 20,000 cases of thyroid cancer have been reported in children under 18 years of age at the time of the disaster. On top of that, the disaster has raised ongoing concerns about the psychological and social impacts. Hello guys. Today we continue the short mini-series about the health issues the Chernobyl disaster has caused among hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. This time we will talk about a broader context of the impact on the human population. If you are interested in the wildlife or flora in Chernobyl, you can find the links in the description of this episode. Don't forget to wishlist the sequel of Chernobylite. You can find the link in the first pinned comment under this video, as YouTube doesn't like outsourcing links in the description. And if you haven't seen it yet, watch Chernobylite 2 Exclusion Zone trailer. Let's start. Chernobyl Disaster Impact Part 1. Post-Chernobyl Health Issues. The Chernobyl disaster on April 26, 1986 remains the worst nuclear accident in human history, causing widespread radioactive contamination across Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, and significant parts of Europe. The accident, caused by a failed safety test in Reactor 4, released massive amounts of iodine-131, cesium-134, and cesium-137 into the environment, leading to significant health impacts for the affected populations. In the three most severely impacted countries, Ukraine, Belarus, and the Russian Federation, over 6.5 million people were exposed to varying levels of radiation. Among those affected were the cleanup workers, called liquidators, or evacuees from the contaminated zones, and millions of residents who continued to live in areas with lingering radiation. 30 years later, the disaster impact was still felt, with many survivors suffering from long-term health and psychological issues. To this day, Chernobyl continues to have a profound impact on those who live in the fallout zone, including children. Although many of the immediate health consequences of radiation exposure, such as acute radiation sickness or ARS, have diminished, the long-term effects remain deeply entrenched. While some of the more immediate health effects claimed the lives of emergency responders, other long-term consequences have emerged in the decades following the disaster. The most significant health outcomes include increased rates of thyroid cancer, cardiovascular diseases, cataracts, leukemia, and psychological disorders. Moreover, the disaster has raised ongoing concerns about the psychological and social impacts, particularly the widespread anxiety and mistrust caused by the Soviet government's initial secrecy and disorganized evacuation efforts. The effects of radiation exposure, including thyroid cancer, cardiovascular disease, and genetic mutations, continue to affect the people of Chernobyl. But this group is not only limited to the immediate area around the now closed power plant, it extends to both those who were affected by the radioactive fallout and even those who were born long after the fatal accident. Leukemia and cancer. One of the most studied consequences of the Chernobyl disaster is the increased incidence of leukemia, particularly among cleanup workers. Leukemia, a blood cancer commonly associated with radiation exposure, emerged as a major health concern following the accident. Epidemiological studies conducted on the cleanup workers revealed an increased risk, including chronic lymphocytic leukemia, CLL, which had previously been thought to have no link to radiation exposure. This group of workers received higher cumulative radiation doses than the general population, with some exposed doses ranging from 20 to 500 millisieverts, MSV, leading to an elevated risk of leukemia. Thyroid cancer is another major health impact, particularly for children and adolescents exposed to iodine-131. Over 20,000 cases of thyroid cancer have been reported in children under 18 years of age at the time of the disaster. Approximately 5,000 of these cases were directly attributable to the ingestion of contaminated milk from cows that had consumed radioactive grass. The remainder were caused by other factors, such as population aging, improved cancer detection, and heightened awareness of the risks. The thyroid cancer epidemic was most pronounced in the Gomel region of Belarus, where contamination levels were highest. Thankfully, the survival rate for thyroid cancer remains high, though the sheer number of cases demonstrates the disaster's profound health impacts on younger populations. Cardiovascular diseases and cataracts. In addition to cancer, cardiovascular diseases, CVD, and cataracts have emerged as a significant long-term health outcomes for those exposed to radiation. Cleanup workers, in particular, showed increased incidences of cardiovascular disease, though the exact mechanisms behind the link between radiation and heart disease remain unclear. Studies indicated that workers exposed to doses above 0.5 Gray (GY) were more likely to develop CVD, though further research is required to clarify these findings. Cataracts, caused by radiation exposure to the eyes, were another significant health outcome for those working in the disaster's immediate aftermath. Previous studies had suggested a threshold radiation dose of 1 Gray for cataract formation, but later studies, particularly from the Ukrainian-American Chernobyl ocular study, revised this threshold to 0.7, indicating that lower doses can cause eye damage. As a result, international guidelines for radiation exposure were updated to reflect the lower dose threshold. Psychological effects. Mental health problems have arguably become one of the most significant and under-discussed consequences of the Chernobyl disaster. The chaotic evacuation process, the lack of clear communication from the Soviet authorities, and the long-term uncertainty regarding the health effects of radiation contributed to widespread psychological trauma. Sensationalist media coverage in the years following the disaster only deepened the anxiety and fears among those exposed to radiation. Studies have found that survivors of the disaster, especially those who were children at the time, exhibit higher rates of depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). The initial lack of timely information created distrust in the government and healthcare systems, and fears about radiation-induced illnesses continue to plague many who live in the affected areas. Among the cleanup workers, rates of psychiatric disorders, including depression and PTSD, were reported to be 20% higher than the general population, with these effects persisting decades after the accident. Children and adolescents in particular faced significant neuropsychological impacts, with many suffering from cognitive impairments, depression, and anxiety related to the perceived and real health risk they faced. The psychological toll of the disaster extended to families and entire communities, many of whom were forcibly relocated from their homes and stripped of their livelihoods. I hope you have learned something new or interesting thanks to our video. Share your thoughts, and if you want to add something, or you would like us to add any information, please write us in the comments section. Same if you want to ask anything, feel free to comment. Remember to watch Chernobylite 2 trailer and to wishlist our new game on Steam. That's it for today, guys. Take care, stay safe, and see you next week.